The radio crackled, just static. 12 voices gone. No mayday, no distress call, just silence. That's why we were here. 7 of us, sent by the company to investigate the sudden communication blackout on Deep Well Rig 13, located far out in the Gulf. Probably a storm knocked out the comms, our captain muttered, not believing it himself. From the moment we boarded the support vessel Trawler 6, something felt off. The sea was too still. No breeze, no gulls. Just a humid pressure hanging in the air like the pause before a scream. Rig 13 came into view late afternoon. It rose out of the ocean like a rusted skeleton, towering, weather-beaten, empty. No lights, no movement. They should have seen us by now, said Miguel, our lead engineer. We hailed again. Nothing. As we approached, the rig's cranes loomed over us like gallows. Thick rust streaked the metal. The helipad was deserted. Our boat's spotlight swept across empty railings and cold shadows. I kept staring at the crew lockers. There were life vests hanging, all 12. Not one was missing. You're sure they didn't evacuate? I asked. Positive, said Grant, the company rep. They'd have signaled, and the emergency beacon was never activated. We docked. The metal ladder creaked as we climbed up. The deck was wet, not with seawater, but something slicker, viscous. A foul smell hit us immediately. Oil? No. Rancid, coppery. Miguel gagged. What the hell is that? We moved toward the crew quarters. Empty beds, half-eaten meals, showers still dripping. It looked like they vanished in the middle of life. Grant reached for the clipboard on the wall. Last log entry says they found something. What kind of something? We never got to read it, because that's when the screaming started. The scream echoed through the rig, sharp, guttural, and unmistakably human. It came from below, near the drill floor. For a moment, none of us moved. It wasn't fear. It was confusion. There shouldn't have been anyone left. Then Grant bolted. "Wait!" I called, but he was already sprinting across the catwalk. I followed, boots clanging against rusted grates, the others behind me. The main stairwell spiraled into darkness. The overhead lights flickered, casting jerky shadows that looked too alive. As we descended, the temperature dropped, not like cold wind, more like stepping into a morgue. At the base, the source of the scream revealed itself. A man, or what was left of one. He was curled in a fetal position under a control panel, rocking, muttering something in a low, trembling voice. His coveralls were soaked in blood. His eyes were wide, unblinking, pupils dilated like black holes. Hey, we're here to help," I said. He didn't register my voice. Grant stepped forward, kneeling. "What happened to your crew?" The man trembled harder. They're still here," he whispered. "What do you mean?" Miguel asked. "Where are they?" He raised a shaking hand and pointed down. "Below." "Below where?" He didn't answer, just began laughing, hysterical, breathless. Then his laughter turned to choking, his limbs twitched, his body went rigid. "Seizure!" I shouted, moving in, but his skin bubbled under my hands, literally bubbled, blisters rising, veins darkening, body convulsing in unnatural jerks. And then, his skin split open. Blood sprayed the walls. We all screamed. Miguel yanked me back just in time. The man's chest collapsed inward with a wet crunch. Something inside him shifted, moved, then stilled. Silence. And then, faintly, from the vent behind us, whispering. No one spoke for a long time. We stood frozen, backs to the vent, staring at the broken, deflated corpse. The blood pooled unnaturally, thick and dark, like syrup. The whispering continued, soft and steady, as if something small was dragging its voice along the inside of the ducts. Miguel was the first to move. "We need to go," he said, voice flat. "Now." "We can't leave," Grant snapped. "We found someone. HQ will want answers." "He's dead," I said. "And there's something in the vents." Grant turned toward me, his face pale. "That's why we can't leave." None of us argued, but tension cracked between us like ice. I looked at the others, Miguel, Grant, Sasha, our medic, and Riley, security. Then there was Coop, the rig mechanic we brought along. He stared at the vent like it owed him an explanation. "There's a schematic in the control room," Coop muttered. "It'll show the whole ventilation system." Fine, I said. Let's check it out, but we stay together. As we backed out of the drill floor, I kept my flashlight trained on the vent. The whispering stopped. The control room was in better shape, dusty but not bloody. Sasha found the schematic, a laminated sheet pinned to the wall. Coop traced the lines. Vents run through every level, including the lower maintenance shafts. What about this? I pointed to a thick pipe labeled bore shaft access. Deepest part of the rig, Coop said. Supposed to be sealed. Was that where the guy said, below? Riley nodded slowly. A metallic creak echoed above us. I turned my light upward. A vent grate had come loose. It hung there, swaying slightly. And from within, a single oily hand slid out. Long, wrong, reaching. The hand froze as our lights hit it. Fingers splayed, glistening, jointed wrong. Its skin shimmered like wet coal, veins pulsing beneath. For a moment it just hovered there, fingertips curling against the vent's edge. Sasha gasped. Then it moved. Fast. Not downward. Back. It yanked itself into the darkness with a slithering rasp. The grate clanging shut like jaws snapping closed. Everyone backed away. Riley raised his rifle. That wasn't human. No, Coop said, shaking his head. But it came from inside a human. We sealed the control room door behind us. Not that it would help. If that thing could move through vents, no part of the rig was safe. What the hell is going on here? Sasha whispered. This was a missing persons case, not whatever this is. Grant looked at us all, jaw clenched. We keep moving. We document everything. That's what we were hired to do. Miguel snapped. You still think this is about a paycheck? That thing just climbed out of a corpse. But I understood Grant. We needed answers. We needed a way out. We find the server room, I said. Maybe the internal logs recorded something. It was 2 levels down. Metal stairs groaned under our weight. The deeper we went, the hotter it got. Not like machine heat, like breath. The server room was cold, wrongly cold. Condensation ran down metal racks like sweat. Coop powered on the terminal. Static burst across the screen. Then footage appeared, a recording from days ago. The crew gathered around a black shape dredged up during drilling. Not oil. A statue. It pulsed under the lights. Then the screen turned black. One last frame appeared, shaky, blurry. A man screaming, back arched, as something black split his skin from inside. Then the file corrupted. We weren't here to rescue anyone. We were here to join them. We stared at the frozen frame on the monitor, eyes wide, hearts pounding. The image was distorted, but unmistakable. A black stone-like structure pulled from deep beneath the ocean floor. Smooth, obsidian, almost organic. The crew circled it, fascination etched into their faces like worship. They brought it on board, Sasha whispered. Why would they do that? It shouldn't be possible, Coop muttered. There's nothing down there but rock and oil. We don't drill through solid structures like that. And that thing, it looked like it was alive. Grant leaned in closer to the screen. Rewind, just before the man bursts. Miguel scrubbed back a few seconds. The screen showed the crew poking at the object. Then, barely visible, a thin crack opened along its surface. It breathed. The lights in the server room flickered. We all tensed. I think we should destroy it, Riley said, gripping his rifle. If it's even still here, I added. You saw what it did to that man, Sasha said. To the guy downstairs. It grows inside them. Grant stood up. We find it. We sink it into the sea. For once, we all agreed. The drilling platform had a freight elevator that led to the core storage bay, where heavy machinery and retrieved samples were kept. That was our next stop. We moved in a tight group, flashlights slicing through the dark. Every shadow seemed to twitch. Every groan of metal made us flinch. As we passed one of the locker rooms, I caught a glimpse through a cracked door. A face, smiling, eyes black, lips split too wide. When I spun around, it was gone. I didn't tell the others. We reached the elevator. The button panel flickered red, already in use. Something was coming up. We stood frozen around the freight elevator, watching the button pulse red, slowly, methodically. Level by level, the light above ticked upward. Sub-level 5, sub-level 4, sub-level 3. Miguel backed away. "We need to go." "No," I whispered, stepping closer. "We need to see." Riley raised his rifle. "If it's one of those things..." "No sudden moves," Grant said, though his voice was shaking. Sub-level 2. Sub-level 1. The elevator stopped. A deep mechanical clang rang out as the doors slid open. Empty. At first, just thick fog rolling out from the shaft, cool and damp, clinging to our boots. Then something clicked inside, soft and wet, like cartilage popping. I stepped forward, against all better judgment. Inside, a single object sat in the center of the elevator floor, the helmet of a rig worker, cracked, bloodied. "Back away," Riley ordered, rifle aimed. I knelt beside it, brushing my fingers over the dried blood. That's when I noticed, on the wall of the elevator, someone had carved a word with trembling hands. "Run!" Before I could shout, the lights above began strobing. A low growl echoed up from the elevator shaft, followed by a wet, dragging sound. I stumbled back. Then I saw them, fingers, dozens of them, curling over the edge from below, clawing up the shaft's interior. They were long, slick, and moved in unnatural synchronization, like they belonged to one body with too many limbs. "Go!" Grant yelled. We sprinted down the hall, the air behind us vibrating with movement. I didn't look back. We slammed through the hatch into the mess hall and locked it. Silence. Then, thump, thump, thump. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, pacing just beyond the door. Not running. Hunting. The footsteps circled the door with calculated patience, like a predator waiting for panic. Thump, drag, thump, drag. We held our breath. The mess hall, once sterile and bright, now felt like a tomb. The emergency lights painted everything in a sickly red hue. Steam hissed from broken vents, mixing with the metallic stench of blood and oil. Sasha pressed her ear to the wall. "It's not walking, it's pulling itself. Something's wrong with its legs." Or it didn't have any. The footsteps stopped. We waited. Then came a sound none of us expected. A voice. From the other side of the door, it whispered, "You opened it." Grant flinched. "That's not possible." "It's mimicking them," Sasha said. "It's learning." The door creaked, hinges straining. It wasn't pushing hard, just enough to let us know it could. A sick game. Riley stepped forward. "We can't stay here. These rooms were built for breaks, not survival. There's no reinforced door, no exit hatch." Miguel pointed to the ceiling. "Maintenance crawl space. Leads to the rig's upper gantry. It's tight, but we'll fit." One by one, we boosted each other up. As I pulled Sasha through the last grate, the mess hall door let out a deafening bang. Something had thrown itself against it, hard. It screamed. Not a human scream. It was like 100 mouths howling through one throat. We crawled fast, knees scraping metal, breath hot in the confined space. The echo of that scream followed us like a memory burned into bone. Up ahead, a faint glow appeared, a ceiling grate that looked down into the infirmary. We paused. Below us stood a woman, one of the missing crew, swaying gently, smiling at nothing. And carved into her chest, deep and fresh, were the words, "It's already inside." She stood in the center of the infirmary, barefoot on blood-slick tile, her eyes glazed and distant. Her coveralls hung open, soak, but read down the front where the words had been carved into her chest. "It's already inside." Sasha pressed her face to the grate. "She's one of them. That's Captain Ellis." "She's alive?" I asked. "Not really," Coop muttered. "Look at her eyes." Captain Ellis tilted her head, as if hearing something. Then, abruptly, she looked up, straight at us. "No way," Miguel whispered. "She can't see through the vent." But her mouth curled into a smile, and she whispered, lips barely moving, "You're next." I flinched backward, heart hammering. "We keep moving." now. The crawl space grew narrower as we pressed on. The heat returned, this time mixed with a rotten sweetness, like spoiled meat left in the sun. My arms trembled from holding myself up. Behind me, Riley muttered prayers under his breath. We reached a second grate, peering down into the crew bunks. Empty. But the walls were covered in black, vein-like growths branching out from one of the lockers. Coop swore under his breath. That's spreading. We dropped down carefully. The air here felt heavy, thick, like it was watching us. Sasha opened the infected locker. Inside was a journal, warped and damp. She flipped through it. It's Ellis's. She was documenting something. What? Nightmares, hallucinations, then worship. The last entry was just a symbol, a spiral inside an open eye. We need to destroy that thing, I said. Grant nodded. Agreed. We take explosives from the engine room, go down the shaft, and end this. But if it's already inside them, Sasha began, then we make sure it doesn't get inside us, Grant said coldly. That's when we heard the whisper. Too late. The whisper slithered through the bunks, soft as breath, but everywhere at once. It wasn't one voice, it was many, speaking in unison, familiar ones, crew members, ourselves. You're already part of it, it said. We didn't speak. Couldn't. The air grew thick again, pressing against our skin like static. Sasha clutched the journal tighter. We move, Grant barked, breaking the trance. Engine room, now! The corridors to the engine bay were worse than before. The black growths we'd seen in the crew lockers were spreading. Veins crawled across the walls, pulsing faintly. Some dripped oil, others oozed something lighter, milky, like marrow. The further we went, the more things warped. Floor panels buckled, walls sagged like old flesh. A humming filled our heads. Just below hearing, a vibration in the jaw, in the teeth. We passed a window looking out over the open sea, but there was no sea. Just darkness. Total black, like something massive had risen and blotted out the sky itself. Riley whispered, I think we're not in the same place anymore. Miguel touched the wall. The rig's changing. Or we are, Coop said, voice dry. When we reached the engine room, we found the doors open. Not broken. Inviting. Inside, the backup generator flickered, and stacked beside it, the explosives. C4 charges, undisturbed, as if someone left them for us. No one touch anything yet, Grant said. Too late. Riley was already moving. We blow the bore shaft and everything inside it. A deep rumble echoed from below. It wasn't machinery. Something was coming up again. From the center of the engine room, the floor began to crack. Black liquid seeped through. It wasn't oil. It was moving. And it knew our names. The black liquid pooled across the floor, swirling in deliberate patterns. Not random, not natural. It wrote. In thick, tarry strokes, letters formed, our names, one by one. Grant, Sasha, Riley, Coop, Miguel, and finally, my name, scrawled at the center, surrounded by a perfect spiral. Back! I shouted, yanking Sasha by the arm. The floor buckled beneath Riley's feet. He stumbled, rifle raised, but didn't fire. We couldn't, not without knowing if it would make things worse. From the cracked opening, something slithered upward, a shape half submerged in the ooze, rising like it was being born. Black limbs, too many of them, slick and twitching. Its surface pulsed like lungs breathing underwater. Then it spoke, with Riley's voice. Don't run. You brought this with you. Riley froze. What the hell is that? It's copying you, Sasha whispered. No, Coop said. It's consuming us. The mimic opened its eyes, dozens of them, all human, all familiar. One of them was mine. That broke something inside me. Grab the charges, Grant barked. Miguel lunged, hauling the C4 into a satchel. The mimic screamed, an ear-shattering sound like metal grinding bone. Pipes burst, lights exploded, and the black fluid surged toward us. We ran, down the corridor, up the emergency ladder through heat and rust and stench. The rig screamed with us, groaning, howling, shifting. Sasha slid on a wet patch. I grabbed her arm, pulled her up. Her skin felt cold, too cold. When we reached the upper level, we barricaded the hatch behind us. Coop dropped the satchel. "We go down the bore shaft," he panted. "Set the charges. Kill it at the root." Grant looked at us all, sweat dripping, eyes wild. "No," he said, his hands trembled. "We drop one of us down there, as bait." For a moment, no one spoke. We stared at Grant like we hadn't heard him right, but his face was deadly serious, eyes bloodshot, lips pressed in a grim line. "Are you insane?" Miguel hissed. "You want to sacrifice one of us?" "It won't let us close enough to plant the charges," Grant said, voice trembling. "It's aware now. It's watching. We need to distract it. Something it wants. Something it knows." Sasha stepped back. "You're talking about murder." "I'm talking about stopping this thing before it spreads," Grant snapped. "You saw the video. The bodies. It's growing. Every second we wait, it learns more. Soon, it won't need vents or hosts. It'll just be." He turned to Riley. "You're the only one who's armed. You'll cover the detonator. I'll set the charges." "And the bait?" Coop asked. Grant didn't answer. He didn't have to. His eyes landed on me. My stomach dropped. "Why me?" "You've seen it up close," Grant said. "You're connected. It knows your name." Miguel stepped between us. "He's not going." "We'll all die if someone doesn't," Grant growled. Sasha looked like she was going to cry. "There has to be another way." The rig shook violently. Somewhere below, steel groaned and something wet howled. No more time. I looked at them all. My team. My friends. And I knew, deep down, Grant was right. "I'll do it," I said softly. Sasha grabbed my arm. "No." I squeezed her hand. "We end this." Riley handed me a flare. "You light this, we move. 30 seconds. Coop set the satchel on my back. "One charge, deep as you can go." I opened the access hatch. Below me yawned blackness, and something waiting in it. The bore shaft swallowed sound. As I climbed down the narrow metal ladder, the voices above me faded into silence. Each rung felt slick, greasy, coated in something that pulsed faintly beneath my gloves. I tried not to think about it. I had the satchel of explosives strapped tight to my back, and the flare clenched in my free hand. My breath echoed off the steel walls, shallow and quick. The deeper I went, the hotter it became. Sweat ran down my spine, but I shivered anyway. 30 feet down, the shaft opened into a cavernous chamber. Not one on any blueprint. It wasn't built. It was grown. Black veins lined the walls like roots, throbbing with faint internal light. The floor writhed beneath a slick membrane that resembled muscle. The air smelled like rot and salt and something older than either. I lit the flare. A red glow filled the space, illuminating them. Dozens of bodies embedded in the walls, their faces twisted in silent screams, eyes open, mouths stretched. Crewmen, some still wearing their deep-well uniforms. And they were moving, twitching, reaching. One hand broke free from the wall and clawed toward me. "Help!" It rasped, voice like shredded paper. I staggered back, heart thudding. Oh God. A deep groan echoed from the center of the chamber. Then it emerged. The statue. Only now it pulsed, covered in flesh and mouths and eyes. The spiral carved deep into its core rotated slowly, alive. It saw me, and it remembered. My name spilled from 100 mouths. Daniel. I dropped to my knees, pulled the charge from my bag, and armed it. The statue screamed, and the chamber shook. Above me, I heard the hatch slam shut. And then, I was alone. With it, the spiral rotated, slow and hypnotic, pulling at something inside my mind. The statue, no, the thing, wasn't just watching. It was burrowing. Images erupted behind my eyes, not memories, visions. I saw the ocean floor crack open like a wound, saw the rig's drill pierce something it never should have touched. Beneath the rock, a vast black network pulsing like a brain. It wasn't just sleeping down there. It was waiting. And the crew? I saw what happened to them. One by one, they touched it. Obsessed. They wrote symbols. chanted in sleep. They didn't scream when it entered them. They welcomed it. My knees buckled. I screamed and clutched my head, but the visions kept coming. The earth bleeding, the oil alive. 1,000 rigs, 1,000 hosts, the spiral spreading like a virus. It showed me cities, people tearing out their eyes, carving spirals into their flesh, not in rage, in worship. Then it whispered, join, become, bloom. I stumbled back toward the ladder. My flare was dying, sputtering smoke. The fleshy floor pulsed with urgency. I fumbled for the detonator. Something grabbed my leg. I looked down. Riley's face, twisted, eyeless, emerged from the floor, grinning, pulling me back. But Riley was still above. This was a copy, or what was left of what it had used. I kicked free, crawling toward the center. The statue loomed above, growing taller, mouths opening and closing in prayer. I jammed the charge against its base and hit arm. 30 seconds, I gasped. It screamed. Everything screamed. The walls bled, the floor thrashed, and above me, the ladder disappeared. There was no escape. But I knew one thing. If I stayed and it died with me, it wouldn't bloom. It was Marisol who found it, tucked beneath a rusted bunk in the diver's quarters, an old waterproof field journal, warped and stained with salt. She handed it to me wordlessly, her eyes wide, more than usual, and I knew before even opening it that whatever was inside wouldn't be good. The first entries were routine, dive logs, depths, currents, minor equipment malfunctions, but then came the shift. A note dated just 2 weeks before the crew vanished read, "Third dive today. Thought I saw movement in the deep trench northeast of rig. Unnatural, too large. No known marine life fits the profile." A few pages later, "We've been ordered not to talk about what we're seeing down there. Management is acting weird, nervous. I swear I heard something whispering through the comms when we were below. Others heard it too. They're pretending it didn't happen." Then, one of the crew, Vasquez, went down on a solo check. Never came back. ROVs didn't find him, just static. I think something's out there. I looked up at the others. No one spoke. Even Declan looked unsettled. I flipped to the last page. There was no date. The writing was jagged, frantic. "It's not a trench, it's a mouth, and it's waking up." That night, none of us slept. The sea around the rig was dead calm, as if holding its breath. We secured the journal and began double-checking our gear. No one said it out loud, but we all knew the truth now. We weren't alone out here. And whatever the divers saw before they vanished, we were seeing it too. Or worse, we were next. At 2:47 a.m., the rig's klaxons exploded into the night. I bolted upright, heart hammering. Red lights strobed through the corridor as the emergency broadcast blared. "Warning, hull breach detected, containment compromised." We scrambled, half-dressed and breathless, to the operations deck. Marisol was already there, scanning the monitors. Her face was pale, lips trembling. "Main substructure, Deck B," she said. "Pressure drop. Something punched through." "What do you mean, something?" Declan asked. "An implosion? Structural failure?" She shook her head. "No, it broke in, not out." CCTV footage flickered on screen, grainy, colorless. A corridor underwater, then a blur of motion like a shadow swimming too fast for the camera to follow. The feed cut to static. We suited up in minutes. Declan and I descended first, following the access ladder down to Deck B. Water flooded halfway up the corridor, thick and black. Flashlights barely pierced it. That's when we heard it. A low, rhythmic pulsing. Not mechanical, not human. Like a heartbeat echoing through metal. We reached the breach site. The wall was shredded. Jagged steel curled inward like paper. And on the floor, half submerged, was Vasquez's helmet. Cracked, empty. A deep gash led away from the breach as if something had crawled or slithered through the corridor after entering. Declan stepped back. This wasn't pressure damage. This was teeth. Suddenly, a noise behind us, a splash. I turned my light and caught a glimpse. Something retreating into the flooded hallway. Long, sinuous, covered in black, glistening skin. We didn't chase it. We couldn't. We climbed back up, sealing the hatch behind us. Whatever came in through that breach wasn't just exploring, it was hunting. And now it was inside the rig. With us, we initiated lockdown. Bulkhead doors slammed shut, isolating Deck B. Air systems were reroute, and security cameras switched to thermal. Everyone was gathered in the mess hall, silent, pale, listening to the distant creaks and groans of the rig like it was breathing. No one said what we were all thinking. We were trapped here, with it. Marisol paced in front of the monitor bank. "It's moving," she whispered, pointing at flickers of heat signatures, faint blurs, crawling along the lower corridors. "Could be water interference," someone said. "No," she replied. "It's warm, alive." Captain Ivers made the call. No one goes anywhere alone. Armed groups of 3, rotating shifts. We were to protect the generator room and communications tower at all costs. If those went down, we'd be completely blind and powerless. Declan and I volunteered to check the backup generator chamber. It was a narrow, echoing tunnel filled with hanging pipes and condensation. Every step echoed too loud. We both kept our weapons raised, fingers twitching. The door to the chamber was ajar. Inside, we found claw marks. They were gouged deep into the steel floor, 5 parallel lines, each nearly a foot long. No human could have made those, not even with tools. There was something else. In the corner, stuck to the wall, was Vasquez's ID badge. It was fused into a thick smear of black sludge. The texture shimmered when the light hit it, like oil with veins of red. Declan leaned closer, frowning. Then it moved. The slime twitched, retracted, as if reacting to our presence. We backed out slowly, sealing the door behind us. It wasn't just a creature. It was leaving signs, like a predator marking territory. It knew we were watching, and worse, it wanted us to know it. That night, we heard screaming. It started as a low moan, vibrating through the walls like the hum of machinery, but different, organic, wrong. We gathered in the mess hall again, weapons clenched, backs to the walls. The sound echoed from every direction, as if the rig itself were howling. "It's the pipes," someone muttered. But we all knew better. Marisol adjusted the sonar feed. "There's movement on Deck C, fast, erratic, like it's testing us." Captain Ivers ordered a recon team. Against every instinct I had, I joined. It was me, Marisol, and Anton. We moved through the flickering corridors, steam hissing from ruptured vents, lights casting warped shadows that made our own shapes seem monstrous. Deck C was where the crew quarters were. As we entered, we found the hallway soaked. The floor glistened with that same black-red residue, stretching in long trails like something had been dragged. Anton followed one of the trails to a sealed door. "This one's jammed," he whispered. From behind it, we heard breathing, not gasping, not wheezing, breathing, slow, deep, listening. Marisol aimed her weapon, but her hands were shaking. The door creaked. It wasn't opening. It was bulging. The metal flexed inward like something was pressing from the other side, studying the resistance. Then the walls around us began to bleed. Thin rivulets of black liquid leaked from seams, writhing like veins awakening beneath skin. Anton screamed and fired. Bullets punched into the door, but it only growled, as if we'd merely annoyed it. We ran. Back in the mess, Marisol said what we were all thinking. "It's not just in the rig." She turned to us, pale. "It is the rig." And now, it was waking up. After what we witnessed on Deck C, sleep became impossible. No one spoke much. We took shifts, eyes flicking to corners, ears straining for that awful breathing. Captain Ivers called a meeting in the operations room, but even he looked worn down, skin pale, voice hollow. He spread out the rig's blueprint on the table, tracing lines with a shaking finger. "There's one place we haven't checked," he said. "Sub-level access tunnel. It connects to the main drill shaft. Maybe the crew went there. Maybe whatever's doing this did too." I didn't like the look in his eyes. It wasn't leadership. It was desperation. We took the service lift down. The metal walls groaned all the way. No lights. just the flickering red emergency strips guiding our descent like blood vessels. The sublevel was colder, damper. A mist clung to the air, thick enough to taste. It reeked, salt, oil, and something rotting. We moved in silence, boots echoing in the narrow corridor, flashlights shaking in our hands. We found signs of them, torn uniforms, a shoe, a patch of skin with a tattoo still intact, all leading toward the drill chamber. The door was ajar. Anton pushed it open and we stepped inside. Silence. Utter, choking silence. The chamber was massive, cavernous. The drill machinery stood like a steel altar, surrounded by a pool of thick, black sludge. And above us, suspended in the air like flies in amber, they hung. The missing crew, limbs limp, faces frozen in expressions of agony. None moved, none breathed. But the sludge beneath them bubbled like it was feeding. And in the silence, we realized something was watching. It had no eyes, but it saw us, and it remembered us. No one spoke after we saw the bodies. The silence wasn't just fear, it was a weight pressing down on our throats. We backed out slowly, careful not to disturb the air. Anton was the last to leave the chamber. He couldn't stop staring at the pool of sludge, like it had a gravity of its own. Back in the corridor, I slammed the door shut. It echoed like a gunshot. Then we ran. Up the corridor, into the lift, fingers punching the buttons like they could save us. The doors groaned closed, but for a moment, I swear, I saw the sludge moving, stretching upward like a reaching arm. When we returned to the main deck, we were down another man. Anton. He was just gone. One moment there. Next, silence. No scream, no struggle, just absence. Captain Ivers lost it, started shouting, throwing equipment. He blamed us, blamed the rig, blamed the damn ocean, said the company lied, that there were things buried under the sea floor we were never meant to uncover, that the drill didn't just go too deep, it opened something alive. The lights flickered, then cut out, total darkness. We huddled together, breathing hard, flashlights flickering on faces that barely looked human anymore. Sweat, grime, terror, they'd changed us. Then we heard it. Wet slithering, not close, not far, just moving. And beneath that, whispers, faint, echoing. One voice stood out. It was Anton. But it wasn't right. His voice had an echo, like it was coming through thick liquid, like something was using it. "I see you," it said. Then laughter. Not human. Something ancient, cold, amused, and hungry. We sealed the corridor behind us with a steel hatch, bolting it shut, welding the edges. It wouldn't hold long, not against that, but it gave us time to think. Captain Ivers sat on the floor, staring blankly at his boots. His lips moved without sound. The rest of us gathered in the communicatio. In's room, trying to raise HQ again. Still nothing but static. No signal, no GPS. It was like the rig didn't exist anymore. Cut off, drifting in the black. Reyes was the first to say it out loud. "We need to evacuate." But the chopper hadn't come, and the weather outside had worsened. 20-foot swells battered the rig. The emergency lifeboats were still on the lower platform, near the cargo lift, near where we saw the sludge. Ivers finally spoke. "You don't get it. We're not supposed to leave." "What the hell does that mean?" I snapped. "The company knows. They always knew. That's why we're out here. That's why we're isolated. This isn't about oil anymore. Never was. They drilled into something. Ancient. A pocket. Or a tomb." Miller laughed bitterly. "A tomb? You're saying we're sitting on a damn grave?" "Worse," Ivers muttered. We woke it up. Outside, the wind shrieked like a warning. We pulled up schematics of the rig, trying to find another way out. But every route, every option, passed near the lower levels, right where it was waiting. And then, from below, the steel groaned. Long, slow, deep. Not from pressure, from movement. It was climbing. The lights flickered again. The emergency alarm system activated on its own. But the alert wasn't in English. It repeated, again and again, in a language none of us recognized. And somehow, we all understood it. No escape. The alarm's voice kept repeating, guttural, low, vibrating deep inside our skulls. None of us knew the language, but we understood the meaning. Every syllable felt older than language itself, like something etched into the bones of the earth. No escape. It sees you. Reyes tried to shut off the speaker, ripping open the control panel, yanking wires. The voice didn't stop. In fact, it grew louder, not just through the intercom, through the rig itself. The metal beneath our feet thrummed with each word. Something was using the rig's infrastructure as a mouth. Miller backed into a corner, white as a ghost. "It's in the goddamn metal." I looked down the stairwell. The shadows down there weren't natural anymore. They pulsed, moved, not with wind or water, but with intent. Captain Ivers was scribbling on the back of a map, mumbling. I leaned over to read it and felt ice fill my veins. Symbols, not words, like the ones etched onto the crew's helmets in the footage. Spiral shapes, long vertical lines, eyes with too many lashes. "Where did you learn this?" I asked him. "I didn't," he whispered. "It taught me." His hands were trembling as he drew. The symbols seemed to move on the paper, like they were breathing. Suddenly, the rig shook, violently. Not like an earthquake, like something massive was slamming into it from below. Emergency lights blinked red. Boom! A metallic scream echoed up from the lower decks, followed by a horrible, wet, dragging sound. Ivers looked up, blood running from his nose. "It's here. It's coming up." Floor by floor. We grabbed what we could, flashlights, weapons, oxygen canisters, and ran for the upper platform. But deep down, we all knew there was nowhere left to run. We reached the top level, an old observation deck surrounded by rusted railings and shattered windows. From up there, we could see the whole rig. But we weren't alone. I was standing in the distance, right at the far edge of the helipad. The missing crew. Every single one of them. At least, that's what it looked like at first. They stood perfectly still, backs facing us, all wearing the same uniforms we'd seen in the recovered footage. Their bodies were thin, stretched unnaturally tall. One of them, who I think used to be Commander Tate, had arms longer than his knees, swaying gently in the wind like ropes. "They're not alive," Reyes whispered, clutching my arm. "No," I said. "They're waiting." "For what?" That's when one of them turned around. Its face was a void, black, hollow, no eyes, no mouth, just an endless pit of swirling darkness. A sound came from it, like whispering and screaming layered on top of each other. The others turned too, each face identical. No features, no light. Captain Ivers dropped to his knees, muttering the symbols again, over and over. "They're vessels now," he said, "hollowed out." The whispering grew louder, pressing into our skulls, bleeding into our thoughts. Reyes screamed and covered her ears, stumbling backward. Then one of the crew things moved, fast, too fast, and vanished from sight. "Go!" I shouted. "Get to the maintenance ladder." We ran, boots slamming against metal, adrenaline drowning out reason. Behind us, something chased. Not footsteps, not breathing, just silence that followed. As I climbed down, I looked up once more. One of them was watching me from the railing, head tilted, face void, pointing, not at me, at something behind me, and I suddenly felt very, very cold. I turned. There was nothing. Just the black shaft of the rig, the ocean below, and the scream of wind through metal. But the cold I felt wasn't from outside. It came from within, crawling down my spine like ice, fingers gripping my nerves. Reyes was already halfway down the ladder, her breaths sharp and ragged. Captain Ivers hadn't moved. He was still on the platform above, whispering to himself, head bowed like in prayer. The figures, those hollow things that used to be the crew, had vanished completely. "Captain," I yelled, "come on!" He looked at me with wide, glassy eyes. "I can't," he said softly. "They marked me." I spoke the words. What words? The ones etched in rust. The ones that don't belong to this world. His mouth twitched into a grin. "I'm not afraid anymore." I knew then. He was already gone. A sudden clang echoed above as something heavy hit the metal. I looked up to see one of the creatures crawling over the railing, its limbs bending in unnatural directions. It moved like a spider, quick and fluid. I scrambled down the ladder, heart pounding, hands slick with sweat. Reyes screamed below. I nearly slipped but caught myself, slamming into a lower platform. The creature dropped after us, silent but fast. We ran through a maintenance corridor, lights flickering violently. I slammed the door behind us and twisted the rusted lock. Silence. Reyes and I stood there, heaving, staring at each other. "What are they?" she asked. I didn't have an answer. From behind the door came a low knock, not aggressive, rhythmic, patient. Then a whisper, so soft it almost didn't exist. "You're already part of it." And the knocking continued. We took shelter in the radio room, one of the few parts of the rig still intact. Inside, a single red emergency light pulsed like a heartbeat. Reyes shut the door, bolting it with a pipe. I checked the transmitter, dusty. Ancient, but still functional. "Help signal?" she asked. I nodded and twisted the dials, static hissing through the speakers. Then, something else. A sound buried in the white noise. Not a voice exactly. More like chanting. Words that didn't make sense. Repeating. Distorting. My stomach turned. "This shouldn't be here." Reyes leaned in. Her eyes widened. "That's not human." I grabbed the microphone. "This is Research Team Delta. We are under threat. If anyone can hear this, please respond." More static. Then a voice, warped and crackling, but unmistakably ours. "This is Research Team Delta. We are under threat." It was our broadcast, echoed back to us before I'd even finished saying it. Reyes stepped back. "Is it mimicking us?" "No," I whispered. "It's ahead of us." The lights flickered. I slammed the mic down and unplugged the transmitter. The room went dark except for that pulsing red glow. Suddenly, the chanting stopped, and something else began. A wet, dragging sound above us, something moving in the ceiling vents, slow, deliberate, heavy. I pointed to the door. Reyes nodded. We moved fast and silent, weaving through halls as the sound followed, echoing overhead. Every metal groan of the rig felt alive, watching. At a junction, we froze. A light flickered on. A camera, an old rig surveillance unit, powered on, and someone was watching us. The feed on the monitor showed our hallway from above, but there was a third figure standing behind us in the frame, and we were alone. We didn't turn around immediately. Reyes stared at the monitor, frozen, her lips moving but no sound coming out. My heart pounded so loud I thought it might burst. There, on the flickering screen, was the unmistakable shape of a third person, tall, lanky, standing directly behind us. But the hallway was empty. At least, that's what our eyes told us. "I'm not moving until it does," I muttered. But the figure didn't move either. It just stood there, motionless, as though watching us, or waiting. Reyes finally whispered, "What if it's not behind us, but inside the feed?" The idea chilled me deeper than any cold ever could. I grabbed a rusted fire axe from the wall and turned sharply. Nothing. Just dim hallway and dripping pipes. Reyes exhaled, but it wasn't relief. She backed away from the monitor, and I followed her. On screen, the third figure tilted its head. The camera blinked to static. Then, all the monitors across the wall lit up, each showing different parts of the rig, the mess hall, crew quarters, engineering deck, all of them abandoned, all flickering, except one. In the bunk room, someone, or something, was crawling slowly across the floor. It didn't move like a person, too fluid, too unnatural. Reyes covered her mouth. "We're not alone." That's when every door in the hall began slamming shut, one by one, down the corridor toward us. Bang, bang, bang. We ran. Metal screeched as a vent above us tore open. I heard something wet drop behind us, hitting the steel floor with a sickening squelch. We didn't look back. We couldn't. Because whatever was following us wasn't walking. It was crawling. And it was gaining. We turned a corner just as another vent above us screeched open. I grabbed Reyes's arm and yanked her forward, barely dodging a long, pale arm that slithered out of the shaft behind us. Its fingers weren't human. Too many joints, nails like blah, a key glass. We bolted into a maintenance tunnel lined with rusted pipes, every breath burning like fire. "Keep going," I yelled, heart hammering. Behind us the sound echoed, metal scraping, joints cracking, something fast and close. We reached a junction. I went left. Reyes, she hesitated. "No, this way!" I screamed. But the thing dropped from the ceiling between us, just a blur of limbs and darkness. Its head turned with a sickening twist toward her. She screamed once. Only once. I watched in horror as the thing surged forward. It was on her in seconds, tendrils wrapping around her legs, her torso pulling her backward into the dark. She reached for me, and then she was gone, swallowed by the shadows. I stood frozen, breath caught in my throat, the echo of her scream still bouncing through the corridor. My instincts told me to run, but I couldn't leave her, not like that. I turned back, raising the fire axe, hands shaking. "Reyes!" I shouted into the dark. No answer, only the sound of something wet dragging across the floor. The smell hit next, rotten seawater and blood. I backed away slowly, whispering her name again and again like a prayer. Then, from the tunnel, came her voice. But it was wrong, too calm, too flat. "I'm still here," it said. But I knew deep down, Reyes was gone. Whatever was speaking in her voice now wasn't her. I stumbled backward, barely keeping hold of the fire axe. The voice came again from the dark. "I'm okay, come get me." But it wasn't Reyes. Not really. The cadence was off. She always had this nervous laugh in her voice, even when she was scared. This version was hollow, mechanical, like something trying to be her. My flashlight flickered. I smacked it hard, and for a second it caught a glimpse. Movement at the far end of the tunnel. A shape standing too still, too tall. The silhouette of Reyes, but wrong. Her arms were too long. Her neck tilted at a sharp angle, twitching slightly with each step. "I don't want to be alone," it said in her voice, dragging one foot behind her, sloshing wet on the concrete. "You said we stick together." I wanted to believe it. I needed to believe maybe some part of her was still in there. But then I saw her eyes, wide, unblinking, pupils like oil. That thing was wearing her skin. I turned and ran. The halls stretched endlessly, each twist and turn more claustrophobic than the last. Somewhere behind me, I heard the wet slap of feet chasing after me. Her voice echoed closer, louder. "I'm still me." I ducked into a storage chamber and slammed the door behind me, barricading it with a rusted pipe. The room was pitch dark except for a blinking red light in the corner, some backup power feed. For now, I was safe. But the whispers had started, dozens of voices, all mimicking the crew, all saying my name. I clutched the axe tight, back to the wall, heart thundering. This wasn't just a creature anymore. It was learning. It was becoming. And it wanted me next. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Reyes's face, twisted, hollowed out, wearing that thing like a mask. I waited for the whispers to fade before I slipped out of the storage room, axe in hand, pulse pounding in my ears. I didn't know where I was going anymore. The layout of the rig had started changing, doors that led nowhere, corridors bending impossibly. Then I found it. The captain's quarters. A steel door marked with a rusted brass plate. CPT, Isaac Murrow, the man who vanished with the first crew. Inside, everything was untouched. Dust clung to every surface, but the room smelled fresh, almost like pipe tobacco. I flicked on the emergency lantern and scanned the walls. Photos of the crew, old logs, and there on the desk, his journal. I opened it. They found something beneath the ocean floor, not oil, not gas, something older, breathing, whispering in dreams. The drill went too deep. We tapped into something that was never meant to be touched. It takes the mind first, then the skin, then the soul. I flipped through page after page of descending madness. Murrow had seen what I was seeing, maybe worse. The final entry chilled me. It wears them now. I locked the last of them outside. I am alone, for now, but I can still hear her voice, my wife's voice. She died 5 years ago. It's in here with me. A sound behind me. I turned. The door was closed. I hadn't closed it. And from the darkness came my mother's voice, soft and sweet. "Baby, come home." I raised the axe. It had found me again. I ran. Down the corridor, away from the captain's quarters, away from that voice that wasn't my mother's, even if it wore her tone like a veil. My footsteps echoed in the metal halls, too loud, too alone. I had nowhere left to go but down. There was one place we hadn't searched, the old maintenance shaft that led deep beneath the rig, closer to the drill chamber. The place Reyes had marked as forbidden in his notes, the same shaft Murrow had scribbled warnings about in his journal. It took me 10 minutes to break the lock. The hatch creaked open with a metallic groan that sounded like something screaming. A rusted ladder descended into darkness. I climbed, step after step, the lantern my only light. The air grew thicker, humid, and wrong. I passed old warning signs, some in English, some scratched over in symbols I didn't recognize. The steel walls narrowed. The sounds of the rig above vanished, swallowed by silence. Then I reached the bottom. A vast chamber stretched before me, unnatural, hollowed not by drill, but by something else. The walls pulsed faintly, as if breathing. In the center sat the drill head, cracked and covered in a black, tar-like substance that shimmered in the lantern light. Bodies surrounded it, dozens. The missing crew, eyes open, skin slack, mouths slightly parted. They were standing, not dead, but not alive. Connected by sinewy tendrils that led back to the dark mass below the drill. A shape shifted there, too large, too slow. It watched me with eyes that didn't glow, but consumed all light. I stumbled back. Too late. Voices filled my head. Not from around me, from inside me. "You're home now," they whispered. And I felt something slither behind my eyes. I stood frozen at the edge of the chamber, heart hammering so hard it echoed in my ears. The lantern flickered wildly, casting distorted shadows across the walls that moved, and even when I didn't. The thing beneath the drill pulsed again, its surface rippling like a thick membrane, alive and waiting. This wasn't an oil deposit. This wasn't natural. We were never meant to dig this deep. On the steel frame above the drill, I spotted old carvings, far older than the rig itself. Symbols etched by something long before our kind set foot here. I now understood. The oil company wasn't hunting for fuel. They were searching for this, for what they called the Well of Echoes, the source of whispers buried beneath the ocean crust. A failed god, or maybe a hungry one. The tendrils binding the crew twitched as if sensing me. One of the men turned his head slowly, mouth opening wider than it should have, jaw cracking as he rasped, "Join us." I stumbled back and hit something soft. A hand. Reyes. His eyes were empty, tears of oil running down his cheeks. "It showed me everything," he whispered, voice wet with madness. "The world above is already lost." I shoved him aside and ran, scrambling back up the ladder, fingers slipping on oil-slicked rungs. Below I heard movement, the slow, wet slide of something rising, something waking, reaching. At the top of the shaft, I slammed the hatch shut and bolted it. Just as the steel shuddered beneath my hands, the rig groaned like it was dying. In that moment, I knew. This wasn't a rescue mission. This was a tomb, and we'd already broken the seal. The entire rig shook as I staggered down the corridor, alarm sirens shrieking, red emergency lights flashing in intervals that cast the halls in hellish pulses. The metal groaned beneath my boots, trembling like the bones of something alive and ancient, long buried but now awakened. I heard them behind me, not just footsteps, wet, dragging movements, the sound of something crawling, slithering, reforming. I didn't look back. I couldn't. Reyes was gone. The rest of the crew, consumed or worse. That thing below the drill had released spores, tiny motes in the air that shimmered like dust but clung to your skin, your eyes, your thoughts. They whispered inside your mind, planting visions of impossible cities, of oceans boiling black, of skies torn open. It wasn't just alive. It was aware. And now, it was angry. I slammed the control room door behind me and bolted it. The cameras were glitching, showing static mixed with glimpses of the impossible. Corridors twisted into spirals, crew members walking upside down, blood flowing upward. The drill's control panel blinked a red warning. Substrate breach, unidentifiable entity detected. I tried to send a message topside, but every channel was scrambled, overwritten by a low-frequency hum that pulsed in sync with my heartbeat. Suddenly, the rig went still. Then, a single voice crackled through the intercom. Not human, not alien, just wrong. You dug too deep. The lights exploded. The floor buckled. I looked out through the porthole and saw the ocean itself boiling, rising into a spiral, forming a face a mile wide. We hadn't just found something ancient. We'd freed it, and it was already reaching for the surface. Water began seeping into the corridor from beneath the sealed door. Not rushing, creeping, thick and black, like it wasn't just water but something sentient, alive. It slithered in slow tendrils, probing the floor, the walls, tasting the air. I backed away, heart pounding, watching it curl and twist like a nest of eels. The temperature dropped. Frost crawled up the metal walls, and my breath came out in pale clouds. Somewhere above, I could hear the groaning of the rig's supports, steel warping, metal screaming. The entire platform felt like it was being pulled downward, not by gravity, but by something older, something beneath. My radio hissed. "Dr. Hammond, are you still there?" It was Dana's voice, but wrong, delayed, distorted, as if it had traveled through miles of water and time. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My mouth had gone dry, and my fingers trembled around the flare I clutched like a lifeline. On the monitor, the seabed had split open wider. What we'd thought was a trench was no trench. It was a mouth. Rows of stone teeth lined the abyss, churning and cracking, releasing bursts of bioluminescent gas. Shapes moved within, gigantic, slow-moving limbs coiling around the rig's legs like fingers curling into a fist. We'd woken something that had been sealed for eons, and now it was climbing. The flare sputtered to life in my hand, casting wild shadows against the metal. I whispered a prayer to whatever gods might still be listening. We came here for oil, for answers, for progress. But the ocean does not forgive trespass. And as the black water began to rise toward my knees, I realized the truth. The sea had never been ours. It merely tolerated us, until now. The water reached my waist, freezing and thick like syrup. Every movement was a struggle. My flashlight flickered and died, leaving me with only the dying flame of the flare. Red light danced across the walls, illuminating carvings etched into the steel. Not man-made, but gouged by claw or fang. Symbols older than language, warnings. Something brushed my leg. Not debris, not current. Flesh. I froze. Then I heard it. A voice, soft and wet, rising from the water like steam. It wasn't in English. It wasn't in any language I knew. Yet I understood it. It spoke directly to my mind. Return below, return below, return below. The voice was layered. Hundreds, maybe thousands, whispering in unison. The pressure in my head spiked. Blood trickled from my nose. I screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the water. I climbed onto a railing, trying to escape the rising tide, but it didn't stop. It surged unnaturally, like a living organism following its prey. The red light shimmered across the surface as something enormous passed beneath, its shadow blotting out everything. In the control room above, I saw movement. Dana. She was pounding on the glass, trying to warn me. Behind her, the lights burst, one by one. Then her face went pale. Her eyes locked on something behind me. I turned. It had no eyes, but it saw me. It had no mouth, but it spoke. You were not invited. I threw the flare at it. It hissed, recoiling but not fleeing. It was studying me. The rig groaned again. Bolts snapped. Metal screamed. We were being dragged deeper into its lair. And in that moment, I knew. We weren't just trespassers anymore. We were offerings. The rig was no longer sinking. It was being pulled, hauled downward by something colossal and unseen, its strength beyond anything natural. The walls bent and moaned. Floodlights burst in showers of sparks. The pressure crushed the air around us, even though we weren't yet submerged. Dana was shouting in my ear, her voice distorted by the comms unit. There's something inside the base structure. It tunneled up from beneath. We triggered it. I could hear something crawling through the sublevels. Massive, wet. Its breathing vibrated through the steel floor. It wasn't alone. Multiple creatures, maybe dozens, moving as one entity. I reached the emergency ladder, but it was slick with algae, not from the ocean, but from inside. The metal was warm, pulsing as though alive. As I climbed, I glanced down. The corridor behind me twisted, warped, the walls breathed, and then it appeared. A mass of eyes, mouths, tendrils, constantly shifting, evolving, like it hadn't yet decided what shape to take. It whispered in my mind. We remember the first men. We remember the fire. You came again. You will stay. I screamed, but my voice was lost in the cacophony of memories that weren't mine. Visions of ancient oceans, prehistoric skies, a world ruled by things that were never meant to die. I pulled myself up to the emergency hatch, slamming the override. Dana was there, barely holding it open. Her eyes were bloodshot. She pulled me through just as the thing lunged. The hatch slammed shut. Silence. We stared at each other, panting, trembling, drenched in sweat. She looked at me and whispered, "That wasn't a creature." I nodded slowly, horror dawning. "No," I said. "It was a god." The rig stopped shaking. For a moment, everything was still, eerily still. No creaks, no groans, just the hum of emergency lighting and the distant sound of sloshing water below. Dana and I sat slumped near the sealed hatch, barely able to move. Every muscle ached. My head throbbed with the memory of that voice, ancient, cosmic. It still echoed behind my eyes like a song I couldn't forget. I pulled out the satellite comms case, hands trembling. No signal, not even static. "We need to get to the upper deck," Dana whispered, voice hoarse. "If the helipad tower's still intact, we might get a ping off the emergency beacon." I nodded, trying to push everything else, the thing, the voices, the warping metal, out of my mind. We moved through empty corridors, our boots splashing through rising water. Every light flickered, every shadow twitched. I didn't trust anything anymore, not even the walls. As we reached the upper stairwell, we saw it, the helipad tower, still mostly intact but bent at an angle, leaning like a dying tree. The emergency beacon at the top blinked red, alive but weak. Dana climbed first while I held the ladder steady. Halfway up, she stopped and stared out into the dark ocean. I followed her gaze. And there it was. Not a single shape, but many. Spires of black stone rising from the sea, arranged in impossible patterns. Structures that looked like temples or graves. And beneath the water, vast silhouettes churned, moving, watching. The rig hadn't just found something buried. We had awakened a city. Dana activated the beacon, a red pulse cutting through the black. I whispered, "We were never meant to be here." And for the first time in my life, I truly believed we weren't alone on Earth. We never had been. The emergency beacon blinked its desperate red light into the storm-heavy sky. Each pulse felt like a heartbeat, ours, maybe, or something else. As Dana stood beside me, soaked and silent. The wind whipped her hair across her face, but she didn't react. She was staring past the sea, eyes fixed on those black monoliths rising from the water. Alien, wrong, yet ancient. They hadn't emerged because of us. They had always been there. We had simply called too loud. A deep vibration rolled through the rig's skeleton. Not an earthquake, not the sea. It was a presence, vast, intelligent, and waking. The water below began to churn violently, forming spirals and currents too perfect to be natural. Shapes moved beneath the surface. Huge, serpentine things that twisted and danced around the base of the rig, as if welcoming us or warning us away. "I think we rang the bell," Dana said. Her voice was numb, distant. The radio crackled. A voice came through, military, panicked. "Confirm signal from Rig 9. Sending evac. ETA 20 minutes. Do not engage." We didn't respond. What would we even say? The air thickened. I could feel it pressing against my chest. I looked down at the black city rising below us, walls of stone etched with symbols no human hand ever carved. A great spiral tower breached the waves, and at its peak stood something tall and robed in tendrils. It turned its face toward us. I don't remember screaming. I don't remember falling. Just Dana's hand grabbing mine, and her eyes, wide, filled with knowing. We had seen what waits beneath. Even if we escaped, we would never be the same. The world would never be the same. Because now they knew we were watching, and now they're watching back.